In the heart of a quiet village called Ogudu, there lived a cheerful woman named Madame Ronke. She was known all over for her delicious jollof rice. People came from near and far to eat her food. Even chiefs from other towns sent messengers to place orders in advance. Every day, her small kitchen filled the air with rich smells that made mouths water. Madame Ronke always smiled and welcomed everyone with warm greetings. She wore bright wrappers and gold bangles that clinked as she stirred her big cooking pot. She said her secret ingredient was love and fresh herbs from her backyard. Everyone believed her. But no one was ever allowed to help her cook, not even her assistant, Grace. Grace was a young girl of 16. She had lost her parents and was taken in by Madame Ronke to help around the house. She cleaned the compound, fetched water, and served food to the customers. She always dreamed of learning how to cook like Madame Ronke, but the woman would never let her into the kitchen while the pot was boiling. Every morning, Grace saw Madame Ronke bring a small black bag into the kitchen. She never knew what was inside. When Grace asked once, Madame Ronke only laughed and said, "That's the magic, my dear." Grace became curious, but she respected her guardian and never pressed further. Until one morning, something strange happened. One morning, Madame Ronke woke up feeling unwell. Her face looked pale, and she said she had a terrible headache. She asked Grace to take her place and serve the early customers. "Don't touch the pot," she warned. "Just serve from the top and close the lid fast." Grace nodded, though her hands were shaking. As customers began to arrive, Grace rushed to the kitchen. The smell of the jollof was as strong and tasty as ever. But curiosity burned in her heart. She looked around to make sure no one was watching. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she lifted the lid of the pot. What she saw made her drop the spoon in horror. Inside the thick red rice, Grace saw something pale and soft floating, something that looked like a finger. Her stomach turned. She stepped back and looked again. This time, she saw a small ear and a piece of hair mixed in the sauce. Her hands flew to her mouth, and she almost screamed. She slammed the pot shut and ran outside. She wanted to cry, to tell someone, but her body felt frozen. Madame Ronke came out of her room just then, holding her head, and asked, "Is everything okay?" Grace could only nod, her voice gone. But from that moment, she knew something was very wrong. That night, Grace could not sleep. Her heart raced with fear. She kept seeing the floating finger in her dreams. She wanted to tell the village chief, but what if no one believed her? Madame Ronke was too respected. People even said she should open a restaurant in the city. In the morning, Grace decided to talk to her friend Daniel, the young son of the village tailor. Daniel was kind and smart. She told him everything she saw. At first, he laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when he saw the fear in her eyes, his face became serious. "We need proof," he said. "Tomorrow, we will go into that kitchen together." The next morning, Grace and Daniel arrived at Madame Ronke's house very early. Madame Ronke was still in her room, resting from the night before. Grace and Daniel quietly entered the kitchen. The big silver pot was still there, sitting on the fire. Steam rose from it, and the sweet smell filled the air. Daniel slowly opened the lid while Grace stood behind him. This time, they both saw it, clear pieces of something that should not be inside food. A piece of bone, dark fingernails, and what looked like a small human toe. Daniel quickly closed the pot. His face turned pale. "This is not just wrong," he said. "This is evil." They knew they couldn't keep quiet. Grace begged Daniel to go with her to the chief's palace. But Daniel said they needed more people to see it, or Madame Ronke might deny it and punish them. So, they decided to tell someone strong, Mama Elsie, the market leader. Mama Elsie was a wise woman who had lived in the village for over 50 years. She trusted Grace and Daniel. When they told her what they saw, her eyes widened. "Are you sure?" she asked. They both nodded. "Then I will come with you," she said. "If this is true, the whole village must know." That afternoon, Mama Elsie followed Grace and Daniel to the kitchen. Madame Ronke had gone to the stream, so the house was empty. Carefully, Mama Elsie opened the pot and stared inside for a long time. Then, with her wooden spoon, she scooped out a piece of meat and screamed. It was not goat meat. It was something worse. "Dear heavens!" Mama Elsie cried. "This is human flesh." She dropped the spoon and stumbled back. Her voice was shaking. "We must go to the chief right now. This is a crime against all of us." Grace and Daniel nodded, tears forming in their eyes. The chief sat quietly in his palace, listening to Mama Elsie, Grace, and Daniel. At first, he found it hard to believe. "Madame Ronke? The woman who feeds this village?" he asked. But when Mama Elsie showed him what they had taken from the pot, his hands began to shake. "This must be handled with care," the chief said. "If we accuse her and we are wrong, we bring shame. But if we are right, we must stop her." He called his guards and gave them orders. "Tonight, we will catch her in the act. We must find out where this evil meat is coming from." That night, 2 guards hid near Madame Ronke's kitchen. Grace and Daniel watched from a distance with Mama Elsie. They waited silently as the moon rose high in the sky. Around midnight, Madame Ronke walked into the kitchen with a sack in her hand. She looked around, then opened the sack. One guard moved closer and gasped. Inside the sack was the lifeless body of a young boy. Madame Ronke whispered something and began to cut the body with a sharp knife. At that moment, the guards ran forward and grabbed her. She screamed, dropped the knife, and tried to escape, but it was too late. The whole village gathered at the palace the next morning. News of Madame Ronke's arrest had spread like wildfire. Everyone came, young and old, rich and poor. Some didn't believe it at first. Others cried, remembering how many times they had eaten from her pot. Madame Ronke stood in front of the chief, her hands tied with rope. Her fine clothes were stained, her gold bangles gone. She did not smile. She did not speak. The chief stood and pointed at her. "We caught you with the body of a child. What do you have to say?" But Madame Ronke kept her lips tight. The chief called Grace to speak. Her voice was low but steady. She told the village what she had seen inside the pot. Then Daniel told them how they opened the lid together. Mama Elsie showed the piece of flesh she had taken out and said, "This is what we have all been eating." The people began to cry out in anger and horror. Some women fainted. Others shouted, "She fed us dead people." One man fell to his knees. "My son went missing last month," he cried. "Did she use my son for food?" Madame Ronke still said nothing. Her silence was louder than a scream. The chief ordered a search of Madame Ronke's house. Behind her hut, the guards found a hidden pit covered with palm leaves. Inside were bones, hair, and pieces of clothes. It was a graveyard of many victims. The people cried and cursed her name. "I trusted you," Mama Elsie said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You smiled at our children. You danced with us at festivals. And all this time, you were hiding evil." Madame Ronke finally spoke, but her voice was cold. They were only poor or unwanted. No one missed them. The people gasped in horror. Madame Ronke was taken to the sacred judgment tree, where evil people were punished. The elders of the village stood around her and prayed. "Let her pay for her sins," they said. "Let no more blood fall from her hands." The chief gave the final order, "She shall live no more among the living." Madame Ronke was sent far away, deep into the forest where the wild beasts roamed. "Let the earth judge her now," said the chief. That day, the sky turned dark and a heavy rain fell. It was as if the heavens themselves were washing away the shame she had brought to the land. Days passed, and the village tried to heal. Many could not eat rice anymore. The kitchen where Madame Ronke once cooked was burned down. A new rule was made. No one should ever cook or serve food alone. The villagers worked together now, and every dish was made with open hands and open hearts. Grace became a hero. She was given a home of her own and helped start a clean, honest food center in the market. Daniel helped her run it. The village was safer now. People learned to ask questions and to never be blinded by smiles and sweet smells again. Moral lesson: evil can hide behind sweet smiles and warm greetings. Do not trust only what your eyes see or your mouth tastes. Always seek the truth, no matter how hidden it may be. And remember, when one brave heart stands against wrong, it can save an entire village. Thanks for watching. Please support us by liking and subscribing to our channel.